Perhaps I didn't call you because I didn't want to be engaged in the tension that you were experiencing at the time, which is precisely why I asked, "Bitch, why haven't you called me?" Could sense it, without any filters or forced smiles, as Rasheeda finally revealed what was on her chest. This wasn't a little argument, this was the sort of collapse that only occurs when years of silent animosity finally blow up, with two women at its core, Rasheeda and Yandy, who have always appeared to be strong and faithful, but underneath there's been simmering, and they didn't hold back when the cameras rolled. Today, we're delving deeply into the private repercussions that recently went public, interpreting every feeling that gazed and all of the unsafe facts between these two. Why did Rasheeda feel deceived? Did Yandy intentionally separate herself? Is this truly the end of a decade? You're going to witness the moments in their lengthy connection that they didn't want fans to overanalyze, but we're going over every clip and explaining every word because sometimes it's not about what they say. It's about the things they don't say. And this quiet says a lot. This is where it all starts. No dazzling lights, no spectacular opening music. Just Yandy, her tone was too soft, like someone trying to cover a boiling fire, and she sat down with a forced calmness. I felt like you knew we needed a minute to chat without. Just so you all know, when a member of the Love and Hip Hop cast requests that there be no cameras, it signals that something big is going to happen. Yandy even stated that it's a red flag. This isn't just any talk flag, it's a setup for an emotional collision. However, I understand why this conversation is happening right now. Music Rasheeda's energy is tense, not quite angry, but remote, and her initial words make a different impression of what's happening. The body language between these two is heavy. Neither leans in, neither sits back. Both are cautious, and she says it as if she already knows something is wrong. This is not curiosity, it's a warning. Says it all. This is a reckoning, not a catch-up session. Then, with a sudden emotional outburst, we learn that Yandy is not really here to talk, or rather because she is upset, and people tend to cry or lash out when they are hurt. She selected the medium ground, coming with a delicate tinge of honesty, but Rasheeda detects that. And all of a sudden, even though Erica Banks isn't present in the room, Wendy brings her up in passing, but we can see it's serious because this is the for Rasheeda's expression to tighten, the conversation to shift from reconnection to conflict. And this is where most romantic relationships and hip-hop feuds begin. Not because of a significant betrayal, but rather because of you can see she's irritated because when people say, "I didn't know," what they're actually saying is that someone else is sowing seeds between two pals. Don't blame me, we say, but in a world where alliances change every week, nobody hates to be found out. So when Yandy says, "I heard," things get pretty heated. This is a power maneuver that involves calling something a rumor after bringing it up, which is a classic deflection technique that enables her to plant the notion while feigning not to own it. Rasheeda is aware of it, and her countenance freezes when you see it. Rasheeda is stating, "You entertaining Erica is a betrayal of our entire code," which goes beyond a simple disagreement and crosses a moral boundary. And all of a sudden, this is about who you support when no one is looking, not about a fight. Once the harm is done though, I apologize. Rasheeda's face conveys the blow if you've ever had a close friend tell you that you can't repair it when the wound is personal, and she's not here for gentle conversation. You understand the anguish that comes from not being that close, and on a national level, it's humiliating. This isn't just a rift, it's a blow, but it doesn't end there because in there is a quiet that follows emotional betrayal that is not overt, and in the next section, we'll witness how Rasheeda's silence develops into fire. As someone leaves here with a heart full of regret and a friendship that might never be restored. We weren't great friends, and in the minutes following Yandy's last line, something in Rasheeda broke. It wasn't a scream, but it was cold, not chaotic. It wasn't a slap, but rather the sound of trust leaving the house. These two ladies have been navigating the highs and lows of reality TV for years, yet their friendship has endured. Drama, husband disputes, and online harassment, but this wasn't about Kirk or Erica. Rather, it was about the two ladies who believed they had each other. Rasheeda remains still as well, the kind of motionlessness that only occurs when your wrath turns inside. Her eyes don't display rage, but rather a profound sense of perplexity. The betrayal wasn't overt, but it was obvious that someone who had always been a reliable ally, someone she had confided in, had suddenly become so aloof. Who was aware of the pressures of being in the spotlight, someone who never appeared to turn against her despite all the drama. But now when everything felt different, Yandy's words struck a deeper chord than anticipated. Asha attempts to maintain her composure, but the shock that hangs between them, Yandy, makes it seem as though they were never really on the same side. wants to explain, but Rasheeda doesn't seem to hear her, and she feels defensive and cornered, as if her every action is being watched closely. Although she had no intention of hurting Rasheeda, the harm had already been done, and she was unable to reverse the direction of the talk. I never claimed that Rasheeda and I were best friends. I said, "You were my friend," and Yandy persists, but her voice falters and the impact of what she says no longer seems to be as strong. It seems like something basic about their connection has changed, and now Rasheeda, who has supported Yandy through thick and thin, can't help but wonder if their relationship is sincere given the distance. Why didn't Yandy call out to Rasheeda when things were difficult for her? The silence between them speaks louder than words, and it takes a battle with Erica Banks for Yandy to even acknowledge her suffering. Rasheeda's emotional barriers are gradually beginning to come down, despite Yandy's best efforts to heal them. The fact is that they both care about one another, but in a world where friendships can turn into foes at any time and alliances change like the tides, trust becomes more brittle than Rasheeda's dissatisfaction increases with time. It's not just because of Yandy's remarks. She also realizes that perhaps their connection wasn't as strong as she initially believed, that Yandy wasn't as dedicated. Resentment builds up between her and Yandy, and for the first time, Rasheeda starts to doubt everything while Yandy suffers. Given the consequences of her own feelings, she didn't anticipate Rasheeda's reaction. She assumed that given everything they had gone through together, this would be simply another disagreement they could resolve. But this was different. Yandy could feel the weight of Rasheeda's pain smothering the air around them. What had begun as a quarrel over a skirmish with Erica Banks had turned into a deep gap. "That I never called you during your issues with Kirk," questions Andy, almost defensively, because neither woman was ready to handle it. Her voice tone implies that she is attempting to defend her behavior in order to make sense of her own decisions, but Rasheeda isn't buying it because Yandy has been the one for years. Rasheeda was usually the first to provide assistance when things became difficult and always made an effort to maintain harmony in the friendship. So Yandy was wondering why. Rasheeda's lack of initiative hurts, and Rasheeda's patience is wearing thin. This isn't really a quarrel or a miscommunication. Rather, it's a turning point where both women start to recognize the flaws in their friendship may not last, which is a painful and uncomfortable reality of their relationship. Yandy's irritation is evident now as well, and she doesn't want to be being viewed as the antagonist in this situation. She tries to defend herself and give her side of the story, but it's more difficult than she anticipated, and her attempts to justify her behavior don't turn out as planned. Yandy's annoyance evolves into self-doubt as each remark appears to drive Rasheeda farther away. Could she have managed this better? Could she have said anything else to diffuse the situation? It's unknown, but what is definite is that their relationship will never be the same no matter what occurs. Rasheeda's mind is racing as she takes in all Yandy is stating that the intense feelings of betrayal, bewilderment, and hurt are clouding her thinking. Why did this happen? They were meant to support one another no matter what. But now it feels like they're on different sides of an irreparable separation. Rasheeda turns away from Yandy in an attempt to restore her calm. But the bond is impossible as the weight of the situation overwhelms her. In that instant, Rasheeda recognizes something important. She can't continue to fight for a friendship that feels one-sided, and she can't continue to engage in something that they previously shared. Even though she doesn't want to acknowledge it, the fact that the other person isn't working as hard in a relationship is a bitter pill to take, and it could mark the end of their friendship. Yandy's voice interrupts Rasheeda as she begins to emotionally withdraw, stating, "Maybe I didn't call you because I didn't want to get involved in whatever these are saying about you." Gentler, almost remorseful, it's a vulnerable moment for Yandy, where she at last admits that perhaps she's been hiding the fact that she hasn't supported Rasheeda because Rasheeda's response is incisive. "You ought to have phoned." She was terrified of the drama, the repercussions, and getting sucked into a situation that wasn't hers to clear up. She says, "Yandy's words have hit me harder than I expected, and the raw honesty behind them stings Rasheeda once." Her voice trembles with the weight of hidden emotions. To believe Yandy, but the harm has already been done, and there is a gap between them that is difficult to heal. Both women recognize that they have reached a turning point in their lives and that there is no turning back. Cannot undo the hurt, miscommunications, and betrayals. Their only option at this point is to choose whether to mend what has been damaged or to leave permanently, as the room appears to get colder as tension increases, and both women are now standing on different sides of an invisible line that has only been more noticeable by the second. What was once a despite being tinged with annoyance, the amicable chat has suddenly turned into something much more complex. While Rasheeda is still struggling to hold on to her Andy is trying to remain calm since he knows that this could be the breaking point. Emotions recognize that their relationship's foundation is collapsing and that there are many unspoken messages in the air between them. It's not only the argument about Erica Banks or the conflict that occurred at the concert, but it's actually something more profound that has been simmering for a while, what has never been dealt with, years of unsaid grudges, silent condemnations. Both women feel the weight of missed calls and the moments when they could have supported one another but chose not to. And Rasheeda is still attempting to stand her position. She turns to Yandy and says, "You never called me not when I needed you the most, not when Perk and I were going through our own battles." In a steady but unmistakably heard voice. Phrases that seem heavier than everything they've talked about so far. She's not simply referring to the altercation with Erica or the incident at the concert. This is about years of feeling like while Yandy, her purported friend, remained mute, she was the one who was always giving and reaching out. Yandy's face hardens at the charge, which she is aware of. Rasheeda is correct. She should have been there more. But how can you acknowledge that you betrayed your friend's confidence without tearing apart the remaining delicate threads? Andy wants to say something. Anything she could say to Rasheeda to explain why she withdrew, but the words don't come. Instead, there's a thick quiet that suffocates the room between them. I didn't know what to say because I didn't want to make matters worse. But Rasheeda's reaction was the final thing Yandy spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Rasheeda's bluntness hurts, but it's the truth, Andy. You shouldn't have tried. And you should have been there nevertheless, but you weren't. She has been well known for years for her strength and unflinching self-assurance, but now that she is revealed, she is vulnerable, and for the first time, Yandy feels the full consequences of her actions, or rather, her Rasheeda inaction. Looking at Yandy with steady eyes continues, "I get it." In a voice now tinged with annoyance, "You're busy, you have your own life," but there is a silence. "I needed you, Yandy. I needed my friend and you weren't there." There is a prolonged, heavy stillness between them. Rasheeda's pain and rage are both visible. She can't just let this go, not now. Not when for a moment. There is a glimmer of shame in Yandy's eyes as she says, "I'm sorry, I really am. I just didn't know," casting doubt on everything she has ever believed about their friendship. Rasheeda shakes her head dejected, as though the apology doesn't even matter anymore. "What should I do?" she asks, but it's too little too late. Any apology from Yandy won't make up for the years of quiet during which I was abandoned when I needed you. Rather, it is the awareness that words alone won't repair the harm and causes a rift in their connection. No matter how sincere, Yandy's words cannot reverse the years of disregard, and Rasheeda, who has dedicated her life to putting others before herself, can no longer act as though their friendship hasn't taken a toll on her. But the way this dispute has developed and their chemistry has changed makes them think about the present as much as the past. Rasheeda is starting to doubt the question she asks herself is if this friendship is worth preserving, whether it is worth putting effort into a relationship that has only hurt her, and whether it is even worth fighting for anymore. "I'm not asking for your apology," Rasheeda says gently. "I just want you to understand why this hurts, and maybe I'm just tired of trying." Her statement is as straightforward as she always believed. Her words linger in the air. And finally, Yandy turns to face her in an attempt to find anything indicating that this isn't the end, but she can't locate it. The atmosphere is tense, and Yandy questions whether there's a way out for the first time. With a quiet resolution in her gaze, Rasheeda is no longer seeking closure in the manner Yandy might hope. Instead, she is not waiting for Yandy to make things right. She has accepted that perhaps this is the end of their friendship. Perhaps it was always going to be a slow burn that neither of them could stop. Perhaps Rasheeda adds, "I just need some space." Her voice is hardly heard at this point, so perhaps we should stop acting as though everything is fine when it's not. It's a painful admission that feels like a door. Ending a chapter that neither of them wants to finish, or when a relationship's cracks get too big to ignore, sometimes all you have left is space. For her part, she stays silent, understands that Rasheeda is right, and that things cannot simply return to how they were, but she is unsure if there is a way to resolve this. The gravity of the problem is beginning to set in, and there is no simple solution. There is no easy solution, and for the first time, Yandy feels uncertain about what will happen next. Rasheeda stands there staring at her, her sorrow evident in her eyes. Though it's not the resolution either of them had planned for, she says in a low but strong voice, "I think it's time we both just step back. Perhaps we'll find our way back to each other." But it's the only thing left to say as Yandy stands there and Rasheeda leaves, the weight of their talk hanging in the air, the friendship's future unclear, and maybe it's The air feels heavier now that they have had time to stand back and determine what they truly want from one another and whether anything is worth mending. What started as a straightforward miscommunication that could have been resolved with a few candid discussions has now blown out into a full-fledged emotional altercation, with both ladies standing at a crossroads examining the remains of what once seemed to be an indestructible bond. But despite the pain and betrayal, there's still a remnant that neither of them really wants this to be the end. Whether you're prepared for them or not, endings do happen. As Rasheeda leaves the conversation, her thoughts are racing because she realizes that she has changed since they first met. Because of the ups and downs in her marriage, Yandy has become more resilient over the years and is no longer the naive lady who would heedlessly give away her trust. Someone more resilient, watchful, and conscious of where her loyalty really lies, which at the moment isn't with Yandy. I've given it too much thought. As she leaves, she says to herself, I always prioritize the feelings of others, but what about my own feelings? She secretly believes that she is worthy of better than this, better than a one-sided friendship, and better than someone who only gets in touch when they find it convenient because she has previously helped others without wanting anything in return. But this time the hurt is different. It feels personal for Yandy because of the reality. Is it startling? She has always taken pride in being the strong one, the one with her life in order, and capable of managing any situation that arises. But in this, she feels vulnerable when she is weak, and more than anything, she feels as though she has lost something important. Not just the connection with Rasheeda, but also the trust that accompanies it. The link she believed to be indestructible has broken, and a simple apology won't make it better. What happened to us? And Yandy wonders how we got here. She's had her share of disagreements and disputes, but this one feels different. It feels like the end. She glances at her phone in the hopes of receiving a brief text from Rasheeda reassuring her that everything will be alright and that they can resolve this, but minutes become hours and hours become days, and the quiet is deafening. No phone call, no message, no indication of reconciliation. Yandy's mind starts as she picks up the phone in a moment of vulnerability. But did she overreact? Was there anything more she could have done? Should she have contacted someone sooner before things got this bad? And tries to repair the damage by calling Rasheeda's number, but the call ends up in voicemail. She leaves a message, her voice breaking as she tries not to cry. Hey Rasheeda, I just wanted to say how sorry I am. You mean more to me than you can ever know. I sincerely hope we can work this out. The seconds pass while Yandy looks at the phone, hoping for a miracle for Rasheeda to answer, and she says, I just want my friend back. Both claim that everything is alright and that they can start anew, but in the days that follow, the quiet persists, the situation's weight becomes oppressive, and it seems like the friendship is eroding further. The world continues to revolve around them, but both ladies remain ensnared in their own thoughts. Neither of them makes contact with the other. Neither calls nor texts are returned. Rasheeda is coping with the consequences in her own way, and the longer they go without communicating, the more difficult it is for them to find a way back to one another. Ponders the years of their friendship and wonders where things went wrong. Was there a specific incident that caused this rift, or was there something that had been simmering beneath the surface for a while? I trusted her, but now I wonder if there was any way she could have anticipated this and taken a different action, even though she knows deep down that the flaws were there all along, just waiting to be revealed. It's a terrible realization that she's not yet ready to fully embrace. She still wants to think that people can change that. I'm not sure if I can ever trust anyone the way I trusted her. Although friendships can be repaired, she is aware that she cannot continue to engage in the same harmful behaviors or act as though nothing is wrong when Yandy is beginning to accept the possibility that perhaps this is simply how things are supposed to be, and that no amount of regrets or justifications will make up for the time she spends a lot of time trying to make everything perfect and fixing the unfixable. But now she questions whether it's better to just let go. Sometimes, she says, letting go is the only way to go forward. They don't feel true, she admits, but even so, letting go is difficult, especially when it's someone you thought you would never have to let go of. She wishes to think that they may still be friends and that a reconciliation is possible, but deep inside she understands that sometimes individuals separate and there is nothing you can do about it. Days go by and the silence lingers for a while, but both women continue to try to move on with their lives. But it's obvious that something in their friendship, which previously felt like a safe haven, has fundamentally altered. They are no longer the same individuals who laughed at side jokes and late-night conversations. Instead, it is now a source of suffering and uncertainty as the weeks pass. Neither of them makes contact, the resentment persists, and the emotional wounds are still there. Neither lady is prepared to be the first to apologize, and both are terrified that doing so would mean conceding defeat. Both of them want to win this game of emotional chicken, but as time passes, it gets difficult for them to ignore each other's absence, even though they might be attempting to move on, but in reality, they're both mired in the past and yearn for closure, but neither of them is sure how to obtain it, which is ultimately what makes the silence so the deafening stillness between Rasheeda and Yandy is unpleasant, but it carries a weight from which neither woman can free herself. They both realize that this silence is more than just the lack of words. It marks the conclusion of an every day that goes by feels like a little eternity as they both question whether there will ever be a time when they can heal the rift that currently separates them, marking the end of a chapter that neither of them is entirely ready to let go of. Although they have both made mistakes, admitting them feels like giving up and accepting the possibility that perhaps their friendship was never as strong as they thought it would be. Believe that perhaps they were never really friends, but rather two people who were content with the status quo. For Yandy, the loss of Rasheeda is unbearable. Beyond the friendship itself, it's about how everything she thought she understood about the world and herself came crashing down. She felt she was unbeatable, capable of handling any drama or storm. That happened to her, but now that the scenario is genuine, Yenda has to face her own weaknesses. There's a peculiar type of fragility that comes with being in the public eye. In this case, Yandy recognizes that she has been exposed and that she is not the ideal woman in a world where every move and emotion is scrutinized. She spent the next several days thinking back on her behavior and wondering where she went, projecting to the world that she was just like everyone else. An imperfect human who struggles to keep her composure. She knows that she should have contacted Rasheeda sooner and taken the initiative to resolve the situation. But did she push her too far? Was it her pride or her need to be correct that created this rift? The problem before it got out of hand, but it's too late and the harm has already been done. Rasheeda, on the other hand, is still in shock after their talk and feels let down by she can't get rid of them. Idea that Yandy doesn't understand what she's going through because she used to think of her as a friend. How could she have been there when she needed Yandy the most? Rasheeda feels that everything that happened before it, including years of friendship, late night conversations, and shared experiences, has been contaminated by the betrayal. She now questions whether it was all of that. She attempts to reach out to other friends, but the truth is that she was only a placeholder in Yandy's life until someone better arrived. It's a hard pill to swallow, but one that she must accept. Nobody can ever fully replace the gap Yandy left. It's not just about their friendship, it's also about their emotional bond. She confided in Yandy about her most private information, her weaknesses, and she feels as though she has been abandoned to deal with them alone at this point. How can I allow myself to become so close to someone who doesn't care about me the way I care about them? She asks herself. She ponders the question that keeps coming back to her. She has no response to it, and in spite of everything, it troubles her greatly. There is still a part of Rasheeda that wishes to forgive Yandy. She hopes that their relationship will endure and that they can continue where they left off. However, she's secretly hoping that realizes that trust is not that easy to rebuild once it is lost, so both ladies keep going about their lives without one another. And Rasheeda devotes herself to her job, concentrating on her music and creating her empire. She relies on her family and fans to support her, knowing that she must continue to move forward even if Yandy isn't there. With the people who have always supported her, even though it may seem like she's alone at times, she knows that she's not. Despite the pressure of the situation, Yandy also devotes herself fully to her profession. Hanging over her, she's learned some difficult truths, the most agonizing of which is that not all friendships are permanent. Some are temporary and come and go in life for a cause, but others, they leave a mark, and Yandy has a scar from a friendship that was never as strong as she thought it would be. The more time that goes by, as Yandy accepts that there is no turning back, and that what has been done cannot be undone. The distance between her and Rasheeda is too great to be repaired by a simple apology, and nevertheless, a tiny part of her still hopes that they will eventually reconcile. But for the time being, both ladies must cope with the consequences of their broken relationship. Though they may not be immediately apparent, friendship, sadness, anger, and regret are all still present, but are beginning to fade into the background and be replaced by the peaceful acceptance that life goes on. As they had imagined, Rasheeda and Yandy are both figuring out how to live in a world without one another. Naturally, the media is having a great time with it, and the tabloids are rife with rumors. Fans take sides over what actually transpired between the two ladies, with some accusing Rasheeda, others Yandy, and yet others stuck in the middle, unsure of whom to believe. However, in the end, only those who have experienced it firsthand can completely understand it, and for Rasheeda and Yandy, the fact is straightforward and sad. Even the strongest friendships can end, but that doesn't lessen their value. Genuine, but it does complicate things as they go their own ways, leaving both women to ponder what might have been. What if they had handled things differently? What if they had communicated more effectively? Honest with one another, but those questions are left unaddressed due to time and circumstance. As a result, the chapter ends with a bittersweet conclusion about Rasheeda and Yandy's friendship. Leaves them both with more questions than answers, but life goes on and they both learn important things along the road. It's a harsh truth, but as we approach the last stage within this intricate tale, the consequences of Rasheeda and Yandy's fallout are starting to surface in ways neither of them anticipated. Their idea that Yandy doesn't understand what she's going through because she used to think of her as a friend. How could she have been there when she needed Yandy the most? Rasheeda feels that everything that happened before it, including years of friendship, late night conversations, and shared experiences, has been contaminated by the betrayal. She now questions whether it was all of that. She attempts to reach out to other friends, but the truth is that she was only a placeholder in Yandy's life until someone better arrived. It's a hard pill to swallow, but one that she must accept. Nobody can ever fully replace the gap Yandy left. It's not just about their friendship. It's also about their emotional bond. She confided in Yandy about her most private information, her weaknesses, and she feels as though she has been abandoned to deal with them alone at this point. How can I allow myself to become so close to someone who doesn't care about me the way I care about them? She asks herself. She ponders the question that keeps coming back to her. She has no response to it, and in spite of everything, it troubles her greatly. There is still a part of Rasheeda that wishes to forgive Yandy. She hopes that their relationship will endure and that they can continue where they left off. However, she's secretly hoping that realizes that trust is not that easy to rebuild once it is lost. So both ladies keep going about their lives without one another, and Rasheeda devotes herself to her job, concentrating on her music and creating her empire. She relies on her family and fans to support her, knowing that she must continue to move forward even if Yandy isn't there. With the people who have always supported her, even though it may seem like she's alone at times, she knows that she's not. Despite the pressure of the situation, Yandy also devotes herself fully to her profession. Hanging over her, she's learned some difficult truths, the most agonizing of which is that not all friendships are permanent. Some are temporary and come and go in life for a cause, but others. They leave a mark, and Yandy has a scar from a friendship that was never as strong as she thought it would be. The more time that goes by, as Yandy accepts that there is no turning back, and that what has been done cannot be undone. The distance between her and Rasheeda is too great to be repaired by a simple apology, and nevertheless, a tiny part of her still hopes that they will eventually reconcile. But for the time being, both ladies must cope with the consequences of their broken relationship. Though they may not be immediately apparent, friendship, sadness, anger, and regret are all still present, beginning to fade into the background and be replaced by a peaceful acceptance that life goes on. As they had imagined, Rasheeda and Yandy are both figuring out how to live in a world without one another. Naturally, the media is having a great time with it, and the tabloids are rife with rumors. Fans take sides over what actually transpired between the two ladies, with some accusing Rasheeda, others Yandy, and yet others stuck in the middle, unsure of whom to believe. However, in the end, only those who have experienced it firsthand can completely understand it. And for Rasheeda and Yandy, the fact is straightforward and sad. Even the strongest friendships can end, but that doesn't lessen their value. Genuine, but it does complicate things as they go their own ways, leaving both women to ponder what might have been. What if they had handled things differently? What if they had communicated more effectively? Honest with one another, but those questions are left unaddressed due to time and circumstance. As a result, the chapter ends with a bittersweet conclusion about Rasheeda and Yandy's friendship. Leaves them both with more questions than answers, but life goes on and they both learn important things along the road. It's a harsh truth, but as we approach the last stage in this intricate tale, the consequences of Rasheeda and Yandy's fallout are starting to surface in ways neither of them anticipated. Their relationship, which was once a pillar of their lives, is suddenly a driving force for substantial change on both a personal and professional level. Both women are changing, albeit in different ways, and now find themselves at a turning point. After a few weeks away from the emotional impact, Yandy has begun to return her attention to her business and is working harder than ever, challenging everything they ever believed to be true about their lives and relationships. It's not that she has forgotten about Rasheeda or the hurt of losing their friendship. Rather, she has no choice but to move on at this moment, so she devotes her time to her enterprises and public persona. putting herself into her endeavors, hosting events, and going on TV, but there's a feeling of emptiness in the pit of her heart. She can't replace the void left by her broken connection with Rasheeda with employment or financial success. While being surrounded by people, she feels isolated because no one knows her. Way Rasheeda did, and that gap persists even though she continues to enjoy success on the outside. As the days go by, Yandy starts to realize that the story she's attempted to create a picture of her life in which she is constantly in charge and moving forward, but it was only a facade. She begins to understand that genuine power is about accepting oneself rather than trying to look flawless to the outside world. Honesty and openness, she begins to confide in a few close friends about her difficulties and regrets. It's a modest but crucial move for Yandy, who spent a lot of even as she begins to change, she can't help but wonder what could have happened if she and Rasheeda had spent their lives shielding their image from the world. Would they still be close if they had handled things differently? Would they have resolved their differences? Her head is filled with questions, but she is aware that they will never be properly addressed. Rasheeda has, however, taken a different route, spending her time away from Yandy, concentrating on her family and her despite her grief over the loss of her close friend. Rasheeda's career is she pours her emotions into her songs and puts her energy into her music because she is determined not to let this break her. Use her disappointment and hurt as inspiration for her work, but Rasheeda's path is about more than just her. Regaining her authority is the goal of her professional development. Yandy's betrayal has compelled her to reassess her own limits because she now recognizes how crucial it is to do so in order to safeguard her heart from she's learned to trust herself more and not rely on others for things that might not be in her best interests. It is also very personal to validate or support Rasheeda's shift. She realizes the importance of having a solid support network outside of her family and starts to rely on them more than before. Despite the glamour and flash of the business, she reestablishes her roots. Spending time with her kids and reestablishing the connections that are most important to her is a powerful experience that, despite the anguish, it enables her to recover and take control over her life. Adversity gives Rasheeda strength since she's learned to maintain her convictions and have faith in herself even when instead than making her resentful. This event has altered her in a way that most people wouldn't anticipate. When furious, she becomes more adamant about her beliefs and no longer experiences the need to prove herself to anyone. She is self-assured. And that is plenty for both in various respects. Women have developed during the time that Yandy's quest is about discovering Rasheeda's path, is about reclaiming vulnerability and realizing that it's acceptable to not know everything. Her strength in discovering how to defend herself even when it seems like everything is against her. The media keeps speculating about their breakup, but it's obvious that Rasheeda and Yandy are both much more than the headlines they produce. They are women who have experienced disappointment, betrayal, and personal development. They have,